So I'm going to record this for the purpose of those who miss the class, or if you miss any part of the class, you can always go back and review the recorded lecture. I will keep the chat window here so that if there is anything urgent, I would respond. Yeah, so I can understand some of the attendance issues were there as you are writing up in the chat window as well. So I would definitely respond to that while we fix your attendance a bit later. Okay, so this is one of the welcome note that is published from your course coordinator, Dr. Shafiqur Rahman. And here is a description of um, your key assessments. Okay. I mentioned that you have assessment number 1 coming up that would be due somewhere in week 4. So it is in class activity. So you will be attending in class, face to face or online. For online students, I did not confirm, but yeah, I will double check how do we facilitate because it is hybrid. So we should support those who are attending online. They should be able to present from there, but let me confirm from your coordinator. As I was told that some part of the assessment needs to be assessed here on campus face to face. Okay, so if that 25% is the one that you have to get the assessment done with the supervisor, then you will have to be here face to face, attending face to face session for the week 4 will be mandatory for everyone. Okay, and you will be provided with a in-class case study. Readings will be given to you, and then we will tell you how to do. As long as you are attending first 3-week classes, you should be able to cover up and understand what needs to be done exactly. Okay, it's primarily research. We studied different types of research in the last lecture as well. We'll come back to that one. And then we have assessment number 2, that is a research methodology report. And you have to select a research topic, including the introduction, literature review, and the data collection and research design. Okay. But for this one, you need to tell what type of research you are going to do. Is it going to be quantitative? Is it going to be qualitative? Or is it going to be a mixed mode? But again, you need to tell me what type of research you're going to do, and then I can guide you accordingly. Okay. Assessment 3 would be your proposal report and a PowerPoint presentation that would be due in week 11 and 12. I will schedule because we have around 30 plus students. So I will put the list of students who are presenting in week 11 and then another group who will present in week 12. Okay, because I can't finish the presentations within the 3 hours time limit. Okay, so we will have to divide those student groups. Yeah, so these are some of the do's and don'ts and your roadmap to success that is published by your coordinator. And here is your class link. So this is assignment 1 in class. I think it is not visible to you yet. In class case studies, okay, that will be there. So for week 1, we covered most of the content. So any doubts there for the week 1 lecture? Any questions from week 1? What did we study in week 1? Can somebody summarize? There were research paradigms. That's yeah. So pragmatism, it refers to quantitative as well as qualitative. There were 3 categories. Yeah, we will go through another revision round in the lecture slides for week 2 as well. So first one is positivism. That's quantitative methodology, and it relies on tools that are quantitative in nature. Okay, so observations through the surveys, right? while inductive or qualitative is looking at the human experiences. So either interviews or it would be reviewing the literature. So we'll go through, and pragmatism is a combination of both of them. Okay, so you will have to let us know which one do you plan to implement. So let's go to lecture 2, editable PowerPoint slides. Lecture 2 slides. Where are the slides? Yeah, what did we study in the class? That's exactly what I looked at in the form of slides. But now we have, okay, that's fine. Let's go through the same material. Now there is a link for types of research. We will go through this one and then basic research.
Basic research is all.
Then we have experimental research. Okay, and what is descriptive? And then there's activity. Okay, so we have got all the. Okay, so this is your. Double check. Yeah, so this is session week 2 session structure. Okay, so we'll start with understanding different types of research and overview of the interview-based qualitative research. Okay, so remember we discussed those 3 types in the last class as well, and here is an overview of the research objectives. So those who attended the class, we looked at these 5 major objectives with the help of an example. Okay. And the example was that of electric vehicle adoption. Now, what is different in terms of a hybrid or fuel vehicle versus hybrid vehicle or electric vehicle or a diesel vehicle? So, what are the properties of all of those different types of communication um, vehicles? Like, what how do they vary in terms of fuel settings? Online students, can you hear the audio clearly, or shall I keep the mic up here? Online students, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am, it's fine.
So it means
Yes,
this
ma'am,
is
it's
switched
fine.
on,
Yes,
so I
ma'am,
should not touch
clear.
this one. That's good. Okay. So we looked at the example of electric vehicle versus different fuels. Okay, so the change in the behavior for the electric vehicle is that it is expensive, but it is ideal for environment friendly people. Okay, so those who are concerned, really concerned about environment, they must think about changing the fuel type to electricity instead of fuel diesel or the ones that have maximum carbon emissions. Okay, but there were problems as such in terms of not problems, but the way in which it differed is that we have got the charging time or the time to refuel your vehicle is different in case of electric vehicle versus any other fuel. Okay, so you will have to stop by, and the fastest charging stations that were created, they allow you to recharge to a few hundred Ks, but they want the electric vehicle to be plugged in for at least 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, so imagine that you are traveling across the states, different states, and you have to cover several Ks. In a day, then how many times you will have to stop? Even if you are using Tesla, it is very expensive vehicle, but after 300, after 400 kilometers, after a driving range limit, you have to stop and recharge your vehicle. Okay, so there's a change in driving behavior that needs to be understood in terms of adoption of that vehicle into the market. Okay, so we need to look at the market understanding and development. Is there a demand for electric vehicles? Do we have people who are really environmental friendly, tech savvy, and they are looking for a vehicle that supports environment at the expense of high cost, as well as uh, increased charging time? Or they want it just for the city drive where they can recharge overnight, and then during the day they have to drive few Ks that can be covered within that driving range limit. Okay, so and we do have support for those charging stations that are installed at different locations, for example nearby train stations or shopping malls. So there is a demand for the electric vehicle or not. Then consumer behavior, they tell us that consumers, they are aware of these different parameters: the battery life, charging time, decision. It's a decision to buy electric vehicle for the household because the way in which it is charged is different, cost is different, and the complete adoption, it's a new adoption of a vehicle rather than adoption of a concept rather than a vehicle. Then testing and development. Okay, so people who are already using, are they satisfied with the driving requirements that they are going through, or they are not satisfied at all? Okay, and the operational efficiency improvement, what can be done to reduce the cost? So hybrid electric vehicles are also coming along that might allow a bit reduced cost, but they will still require some form of charging, that you have to stop by and recharge your vehicle. Then this part comes along. So operational is something that is happening in routine. Okay, every time you're going to refuel your electric car is going to be different than how you refuel your petrol car or a diesel car. Okay, but strategic decision making is that how electric vehicle adoption is going to be taken up over next 5 years. Okay, so what is our plan based on previous couple of years experiences, or the data that we have that is coming along from the previous experiences? What do you think, that what are different growth opportunities? What can be done to guide those purchase behaviors? Okay, so this was one of the part that we covered in your week one lecture. And then we looked at different paradigms. Positivism, the first one is positivism, where we have quantitative quantity numbers. We are playing around in terms of surveys. For example, you might have used certain you might have been to certain malls, for example, where you need to put that satisfaction as it's not even a Likert scale thing as 1 2 3 or number. Rather it's a happy face or it's a sad face or it's no argument. Okay, so you can just click on that thing to provide feedback, a quick way to get feedback, but again it is converted into numbers at the back end to analyze that how many consumers are satisfied with that particular product, how many are not happy, how many are neutral. Okay, so we need to analyze based on analyzing the numeric data. The quantity of that satisfaction can be measured, or the quantity of that adoption of the electric vehicles, for example, that can be measured, that how many people responded as EV as their future car. Okay, how many people responded that they are satisfied with the electric vehicle being environment friendly. Okay, In terms of the qualitative, however, this is interpretivism paradigm, inductive approach. You can, if you are using this approach, you can put this one as part of your report later on in assessment number 2, I believe. Okay, so you can pick up this thing and you can put that, okay, I'm following the positivism, positivist paradigm, deductive approach, and my survey instrument is this. Okay, so these are my mathematical items that I will be covering. If you are following this one, then you have to follow the qualitative methodology. Okay, so you are looking at the quality of the results. Okay, so certain interviews that are done, focus groups that are done. For electric vehicle adoption, for example, we can sit down with the Department of Transport and we can discuss that what are different changes that needs to be done. Do we require more EV charging stations? Do we require more the availability of those vehicles in the market for all the people, the individuals in our society? But Department of Transport would ask you that why are do you have any data? Did you conduct any surveys with the community? Did you conduct those surveys? Did you conduct any interviews with people? Are people really looking forward to adopt electric vehicle as their future car? Okay, so that's just one example, right? So here we are talking about those interviews. They are not numbers. We are talking about the quality. So qualitative methodology, we are not talking about surveys or numbers. That's done in the quantitative methodology. Over here, it is interviews, discussion groups, focus groups, where we talk about certain elements and we highlight those keywords that this is the point that we discussed. Okay, so you have to provide which points are really crucial for the purpose of your study. And then pragmatism, as it suggests, very practical, we can combine both. Okay, but for the purpose of your research thing, you need to tell me which one are you going to follow so that I can guide you accordingly, whether you're following the quantitative or the qualitative, or even if you're combining both, you need to tell us that yes, they are combined. Okay. Yeah, so different types of research. So whenever we talk about research, you have to be curious about it. You need to find out something that is not known, okay? Or it is already known, but you need to reinvestigate whether it is true or not, okay? So I still remember when we enrolled for master's course, and there was a research-based course for the very first time in our MS computer, because I did masters in computer science. So we were doing lots of programming, lots of database design, development courses, technical courses, and then there was a research methodology course. And the other students, they asked us, what do you do in that research methodology course? And we used to have 4 months of a semester. It was our second month potentially. And then I told one of the fellows that you have to search again and again and again and again. You put the search string again into the Google Scholar at different places, and then you start finding out. And then they asked again that, no, but what is research? Like, how do you define research? And then I told them again that we have to search for more information from different sources. We require more sources. So what are the other steps that you do? And then again I said I have to go through and search again. So it's a repetitive search. It's a repetitive because you are curious enough to find more knowledge, to find more resources of information that support the argument that you are looking for your discussion. Okay. So later, applied research and innovations. Now, there are different types of research that we will look at, and it's very interesting here. Let's look at this one, Fundamentals of Basic Research video. Online students, I hope you can see that. Otherwise, it's there in your link for the week 2. This is types of research. This is basic research. Let's
Understanding fundamental principles without immediate practical use. It's driven by curiosity and exploration. Take Newton's law of gravity. Sir Isaac Newton wasn't solving a specific problem. He was simply curious about why objects fall and how planets move. His work was theoretical, but it laid the groundwork for many practical applications. For example, Newton's law of gravity is crucial for calculating spacecraft, satellite, and space probe trajectories, enabling space exploration, satellite communications, and GPS technology. In engineering, understanding gravity helps design stable buildings and bridges. Newton's theories also paved the way for later physicists like Albert Einstein, whose theory of general relativity led to technologies like nuclear energy and advanced physics. Newton's story shows how fundamental research, driven by curiosity, can lead to significant innovations. Though his law of gravity wasn't developed for practical use, it profoundly shaped modern science and technology.
Okay, so that's interesting. Newton's law of gravity would never have been determined if Newton was not looking at or was not trying to investigate why Apple fell down. Okay, so that's quite interesting. What happened, what caused that thing to go down? And then they investigated and studied, and that's how the concept of research it came into. It existed basically even at that time, and they were trying to investigate. Then we have applied research. It focuses on solving specific practical problems. Okay. Um, so let's have a look at the other video for the applied, the types of research. I think it would be this one.
Types of research. There are two types of research in terms of the nature and purpose of a study, namely basic or fundamental research and applied research. On the one hand, basic research is a type of research that investigates the basic reasons and principle behind the occurrence of a particular phenomenon or event. Basic research is also referred to as theoretical research.
Yes, any question? Any questions, students? Okay, let's continue.
As a theoretical research, basic research, therefore, is driven by pure curiosity and the desire to expand one's knowledge on a specific subject matter or discipline. Hence, as we can see, basic research may not necessarily lead to an immediate use or application. An example of basic research is an investigation that looks at the factors that trigger depression. Although this type of research does not directly address real-world issues or problems, basic research is equally important as it enhances our understanding of the world around us. This is because basic research provides us with a systematic and deep insight into a problem that can have practical significance to our life and the society as a whole. Scholars further divide basic research into pure and strategic types of research. Introducing grammar. Really, like you've never. Pure research is conducted without any specific outcome in mind other than the advancement of knowledge, while strategic research is conducted with the intention of providing a broad base of knowledge which may help in addressing a specific problem.
So that's
Applied
important.
research, on the other hand, is a type of research that aims at finding solutions to pressing problems that society, organizations, and the like are facing by employing well-known theories and principles.
Yeah. So, for example, for the applied research, in terms of the technologies, that would be how they are developed. Okay. So, you need the skill set to exactly develop that tool or technology, right? So we are not relying on just one particular type of tool that is available. Rather, we are trying to determine what are other different ways through which we can develop. Okay, so quantitative research, as it talks about quantity, it talks about survey instruments. So we require those instruments where we can mathematically evaluate or calculate that what are the aspects that need to be covered, or we have to measure certain attributes that are required to be checked. So the sample, quantitative research sample begins with a theory, and then you pick up an independent variable, and then you have to use the SPSS or the Smart PLS tools. Okay, these are tools for social science data, for the statistical analysis of the social science data, and then you build certain hypothesis and framework. Okay, so if we run through the same scenario for the purpose of adoption of electric vehicles, then we begin with the theory that, okay, fuel vehicles are existing. We have got a couple of electric vehicles as well, and we are planning to make it more prevalent and make it more available for community because they are ready to adopt. Okay. So our independent variable and the dependent variable. So independent variable would be what would be the price. Let's say we have to predict the price of a hybrid variable, and the dependent the variable that define that independent variable would be whether people are willing to pay that price. What about their household income? Does it allow that? Or what about their being more environment friendly or not? Or they're being more tech savvy? Do we classify them as tech savvy or not? Do we classify them as environment friendly or not? So those variables that they tell us whether we can go for increasing that price or defining that particular price. So more environment friendly, more tech savvy, and high household income, it means we can keep that price up to that mark. But if not, if that drops down, we'll have to drop it. But how far can we drop? We cannot do it at our own end. We have to make sure that it does not drop below the range for the acceptable sale for electric car itself. How do you analyze? How do you make that decision? You have to rely on those SPSS, or even Microsoft Excel could be used for regression analysis, but the SPSS could be for the statistical package for social science data analysis, or smart PLS tools, they can be used. And then you can come up with a hypothesis that since data is telling us this is the input from the surveys, from the feedback from the users, and then we can make this hypothesis, and this is our solution framework. Okay, so that's the quantitative thing. And then the qualitative would be that you have to look at, obviously, um, you have to look at the implementations in terms of you will observe. It's not the numeric thing, rather you will be observing the interview data for certain keywords, for certain expressions that you're looking for from the interviews. Okay, or it could be the observations, directly observing people behavior, and then content analysis to gather deep insights. Any descriptive emails that are being exchanged and are visible or shared to for the purpose of research, that could be taken up, or focus group, focus study. What do we call that? There are forums, over a place where people can put their discussion forums, and you can read through that content. So that's content analysis, that you are reading through that content to establish an understanding, to find out those keywords about that particular research. Mixed method is going to combine both of them. The descriptive research is describing what are we talking about. Okay, so what is the problem statement? A descriptive case study, for example, on smartphone usage among teenagers might involve observing a large group of teens to determine which apps are most popular, how many hours they spend on their phones daily, and their reasons for using certain apps. So that's just a descriptive statement that we have to study teenager behavior. Um, does it affect their study success? The amount of time that they are spending with technology? Does it affect their mental health? What about the amount of consistency? Okay, one of the research they highlighted that the kids who are born after the year, I don't remember exactly which year, 2005 onwards, their their pattern for establishing a focus, their time to stay focused is shorter. Why? Because they are so much exposed to technologies and the social media thing that they want a change. They won't be able to tolerate, I'm afraid they won't be able to tolerate 90 minutes lecture like we did. But yeah, that's what I was thinking. How would the uni education or how would education in general be? Although we are relying on AI tools for learning as well, where we can incorporate change, break, and then discussing the topic. But that focus thing has reduced because of the technology use. So that's a description of what is going on, or what are we trying to do, and then we think about whether to apply the quantitative approach or the qualitative methods, or we combine both of them. Okay, even for electric vehicle adoption example, we can combine both. Okay, so we can look at for a particular suburb, we can conduct the survey instrument, and then we can sit down with Department of Transport and discuss that why we should have more charging stations, why we should support the reduction in the electric vehicle price up to a level that individuals can afford without any loss by the EV companies. So Tesla might have to reduce further. So descriptive is just description of what is going on, what are the parameters that we are going to study, and whether we are going to deploy the quantitative or qualitative methodologies. Analytical research would come along if we have certain types of data, and we have got the patterns recorded over a period of time. Okay. For example, we have data coming in from hospitals, um, from their from the Department of uh, neurosurgeon thing, that how many operations they are doing and how many neurosurgeon surgical issues they are rising. So looking at the data set for previous years data, at least 500 cases can be studied. Then what was common between them? How many males? How many females? Did they work from home? Did they work at their in the environment? Were they working, employed or not employed? Okay. Did they have a family? Okay. What about their active lifestyle? Were they sitting at home or working, sitting on a desk for full day? So is it quite sedentary lifestyle, or what is causing that mental stress to happen? Or number of pressures? Are they away from family or living very close to family? What are those reasons that are coming along? So we require that data set to be recorded, and then we can analyze which parameters affected the occurrence of a particular disease, for example. Similarly, for even for consumer behavior, this could be applied that certain products, the chain of grocery stores we have, you can analyze the data sets that are coming in, why one particular suburb has got a particular product more popular, because is it the population in that area that is affecting, or the people in that particular suburb, they have demand for that particular item. So you can notice by observing the data set, by looking at those collection of data set that are recorded in those patterns that are there existing inside the data set, and then you can establish the relationship. Yeah, so we are having hybrid mode of teaching, for example. then we can analyze that, okay, how many students attended face-to-face, how many did online, what is the success rate of face-to-face, what is the success rate of online students, and then we can compare, contrast, and provide the analytical feedback that since data tells us that this has happened, so this is our output. So the findings are not just observatory or numerical, rather we are relying on the data. They could be numerical because you're calculating from the data set, but it has to be from existing observations. So existing observations must exist. So you cannot, for example, this new building for the KOI has been created. So we cannot tell that which room in at level 7 has got um, the best ventilation or the number of windows. We can tell that, but we cannot tell that students they feel more happy or instructors they are really feel energetic during the daytime because the number of windows is really good. Is it the number of windows that is affecting the energy level? Is it the time of the class? So those parameters they can be assessed if we have got classes done and we have got the data set recorded. So on the day one, we can't establish that because this is the first time we are moving into this building and we are doing the classes. So let's see how it goes. And then we get the feedback. Okay. So analytical, there is a binding that we do have data set coming in beforehand. Okay. For experimental, it's a kind of cause and effect relationship. Okay, so you have to change certain variables in an experiment and then see how it is going to impact. So, for example, some of the teenager groups, they were um, provided with the technology and then uh, they had full liberty to use mobile phones. They could access social media and then we calculated how many hours of sleep did they complete. Okay. While the others, where there was a place like there's a time where social media will get disconnected and you have to sleep and there's no other option. If you have to work, you have to go through a process. Otherwise, you can sleep and you can't use social media uncontrolled manner. So you can observe those sleep patterns as well. The example that is presented here is sleep on memory retention. Researchers might ask one group of participants to sleep 8 hours and another group to sleep 4 hours. Then they evaluate each group's memory performance, okay, or their mental energy levels. They might be given mathematical problems to solve. So those who slept for 4 hours versus those who slept for 8 hours, the results might be different. Okay, we don't know. It's an experiment, so we need to determine if we are going to provide them with similar problem statements, then how can they resolve, or if we do the blood test or that's part of the experiment. We need to do certain evaluations to determine how it's going to impact. The color of drink affect the taste. I think it depends on the age as well, because kids they might get attracted, but those who have knowledge of how colors are bad for your health, they might get. So it depends on number of factors. Okay, so yes, different colors obviously they bring along different message. Then we have observational research, watching and recording the behavior of subjects in their natural environment without intervention, and then once you observe um, and yeah, so one of the observation in at school level, for example, could be some of the kids they respond quickly to the uh, to the instructions that are provided, while the other kids they are a bit slow. Okay, they take some time to understand. So that was observed in their children's playground interactions, and it was noticed that some of them they were happy to share, uh, and there could be reasons why. So we need to observe, and some of them they had lots of conflicts, and lots of while the others they did cooperative play. So is it the family background that's going to affect, or is it because kids, some of them, they did not have food this morning, while others, they ate properly. So we need to observe what has happened in the background, and then we can make any conclusions. But it would require obviously certain period of time to make any decision. Now, case study research, that's the one that you have to do in week 4. Okay. It examines a specific case. So you will be provided with a specific, such as a person, group, event, or organization, to explore its complexities and understand it within its real life context. On single school, implementing a new teaching method can provide detailed insights into the process, challenges, outcomes, and perceptions involved. Okay. Um, One of the universities here in Sydney, they switched from from a different teaching mode, from a semester-based teaching mode to a block mode of teaching, and they are having lots of changes that needs to be done. So but they did a lot of research beforehand, and then they are getting the results and student satisfaction to support whether it was a good approach or not. Okay, I think let's watch a video about types of research, because our focus capacity is that's types of research. Basic research is done, experimental method.
Each of these 3 cups contain the same amount of water. The only difference between them is that orange, green, and yellow food coloring was added to change their appearance. A psychologist is investigating the research question, does the color of a drink affect the taste? If you think so, how would a psychologist even go about answering this question? The answer? Conduct an experiment. In this second episode, I covered the experimental method, the psychologist's most powerful research tool. Because this research question requires a psychologist to look at causal relationship between variables, in this case, does color cause a change in taste, they must perform an experiment. And only the experimental method can establish that changes in one variable lead to changes in another. In a simple experiment, a researcher manipulates a variable like color to determine its effect. To begin an experiment, a psychologist must identify his or her variables. A variable is anything that can vary or change, in this case, both color and taste. There are 2 primary types of variables, independent variable and dependent variable. The independent variable is the treatment variable that is manipulated by the psychologist. It represents the causes of some outcome. In this case, the psychologist is only manipulating the color to see if it affects the taste. On the other hand, the dependent variable represents the outcome that the psychologist is measuring. This will be the data that is collected and analyzed. In this case, the response or outcome is taste. Before we move on, check your understanding of both types of variables. The research question is, does money increase happiness? Pause the video here and identify the independent variable and dependent variable in this scenario.
Yeah, what would be the independent variable? It's cause and effect thing. So in the last one, yes, online students, would you like to participate here? Color of the drink affects the taste. So taste was dependent, and color is independent. So independent would be amount of money, and dependent would be the happiness. Okay.
Is the amount of money. Money represents the treatment to see if it affects the outcome. The psychologist can manipulate the amount of money among participants. The dependent variable is a level of happiness. Remember, the dependent variable represents the outcome or response. The psychologist has no influence on the level of happiness among participants. It is also very important in experimental research to clearly define the variables. This is one of the most significant yet confusing concepts for students. Defining the variables in an experiment is known as operationalizing. The purpose of operationalizing is so that another psychologist can clearly replicate or copy the same study. Let's practice operationalizing variables. Take a look at this research question. Does lack of sleep impair memory? A psychologist must clearly define the variables sleep and memory into something that can be studied and measured. I've defined sleep as sleeping less than 3 hours per night and defined memory as memorizing a list of 20 random numbers in order. Without defining the variables, no one would know how a psychologist investigated this particular research question. Take a moment here and pause the video and operationalize these concepts: aggression, health, and sadness. Remember, define them clearly so that another psychologist knows exactly what you did. Now that it covered fundamental vocabulary, let's begin designing an experiment. A psychologist must first randomly assign participants to either the group that receives the treatment, this group is exposed to the independent variable, or the group that receives no treatment. This is the control group that may receive a placebo, for instance. The control group acts like a comparison group. This is important because without the control group, a psychologist cannot tell whether the treatment is what is causing a change. To study the particular research question, does the color of a drink affect the taste? Participants in the control group receive normal bottled water with no flavoring or coloring. Participants in the experimental groups also receive normal bottled water. However, there is food coloring added to their glasses to create a drink that appears orange, green, and yellow. This is the treatment. A psychologist, for example, might hypothesize that participants in the experimental groups will pick up hints of orange, lime, and lemon flavors because of the food coloring. Don't forget that a psychologist must also operationalize the variables and make them measurable. For example, how can taste be measured? A psychologist might use a survey. Participants in both groups receive a Likert survey, measuring the drink's sweetness, how refreshing it is, and level of carbonation. This way, a psychologist can collect data on taste and compare the responses of the control group and experimental groups. After all the participants finish their drinks and take the survey, the data is then collected and analyzed to look for variations. Our experiment is complete. It is important to note that all variables in an experiment must remain the same. For example, temperature of the water, type of drinking glass, instructions to the participants, except for the independent variable. A good researcher knows that many other factors besides the independent variable can influence the results of the experiment. These are known as confounding variables, and there are many types. One example is experimental bias, when researchers unconsciously treat participants in the experimental and control groups differently to increase the chance that they confirm their hypothesis. Demand characteristics are cues a researcher might hint to participants about the purpose of the study. Participants might even change their behavior just because they're being observed in a study. This is known as the Hawthorne effect. One way to eliminate confounding variables, which I discussed earlier, is randomly assigning participants to the experimental and control groups. This is called random assignment. This is like flipping a coin, where each participant has an equal chance to be in each group. Another way is to use a single blind procedure, where participants are unaware of which group they are assigned to, or a double blind procedure, where both participants and the researcher are unaware.
Imagine being able to build.
Okay, so I think we covered this one. So any questions so far? Online students, any questions?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, so the cross-sectional versus longitudinal research. Now, this is based on the approach that is used for data collection across different time periods or different locations. It depends on how it is dividing that cross-sectional research study. Now, for this one, relationship between age and smartphone use by surveying people of different ages at the same time. It would be quite challenging because you can't compare someone in their 80s versus someone in their early teens or late teens, and their usage pattern for that particular smartphone. You need to somehow distinguish or create those variation, right? Now, for longitudinal research, for example, for over a period of time, over a couple of years, they are looking at the group of employees for several years to see how their job satisfaction changes. So, same group, but over different period of time, how does it affect? Okay, so because the only thing that they share in common is same group, but we are distributing it across period of time. Okay, so there is an abstract and you have an activity that you have to identify. This activity is different. Identify research method from the abstract. So you are provided abstracts, number 1, number 2, and number 3, 4. 4 abstracts are provided. So you have to identify which research method is used. It can be qualitative or quantitative. And then there are steps for interview design. Yeah. So interview design we will study after. I'll give you some time and then you have to tell me. Just read through this one. Okay. You have access to the slides, right? Yes. Oh, you did not bring? Is it possible to open it up on your mobile device itself? I try that. Otherwise, I'll leave it up front here. Yes, so for the first one on page number 27 of your thing. Yeah, by just looking at you can look at the screen as well. By just looking at the description, what do you think? Is it quantitative or qualitative?
Quantitative.
Why?
There's a response from the users.
The term questionnaire tells us that questionnaire instrument is used. So survey is done, right? And then
Yeah, right.
SPSS package is used for ANOVA findings. So that clearly tells that an experiment is done with the quantitative, with the numbers, number crunching on the data. And there is a number of respondents as well. 491% usable responses could be retained for further analysis. So that's definitely a quantitative approach. What
Yes.
about this one? You can have a look over here on the screen as well. Yeah, what do you think?
Qualitative. No.
Yeah, anyone else? Anyone else would like to answer?
It's very qualitative.
Yeah. Is it quantitative or qualitative?
Qualitative.
Qualitative. Why?
There are samples and limitations on it.
And if you read through this line, it says the present study explored the perceptions of the marketing professionals towards digital influencers. And so the perceptions, they are, and the research followed a qualitative approach with the non-probabilistic convenience sampling, semi-structured interviews. So interviews means, uh, yeah, yeah, we are looking at the qualitative, non-numeric thing. Okay, so it's looking at the qualitative. Okay, now let's look at this one. Examining the acceptance of an integrated electronic health record system. Insights from a repeated cross-sectional design. That is clearly a cross-sectional design thing itself. So,
Quantitative, I think.
sorry?
Quantitative, I think.
Yeah, because in cross-sectional, you're going to somehow distinguish between certain groups based on certain aspects. Okay. It's more of the cross-sectional design itself. Remember the longitudinal and cross-sectional design that we studied at the end? Yeah, so that would be cross-sectional research. And what about this one? Physicians' perceptions of autonomy across practice types. Over a period of time,
It's quantitative.
different physicians looking at, and the longitudinal study over period of time. Okay, so it does involve number crunching, but obviously in the longitudinal fashion. Okay. We will not take a break, rather we'll finish up earlier, I think. Will that work? Are you okay to continue, students, or do you need a break?
Yes, ma'am, you can continue.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we can
Fine,
finish
yeah,
up.
you can
now.
continue.
Yeah. Okay, so before I switch to this thing, yeah, we have unbiased research approach. Okay. Researchers record responses in their natural settings. Researchers should always be natural, never imposing their thoughts on respondents and in no way influencing or guiding responses. Usually, what we do is I I got involved in one of the study for electric vehicle adoption in Western Australia. It was somewhere in 2011, and we had to conduct that survey experiment, but we added team a team of people who were supposed to create those questionnaire was designed, the instrument was created, but then we have to print it or execute that survey in an online thing. Okay, so that was a full-fledged task. So we hired staff as part of the university project, but we hired someone who knows something about IT but knows nothing about the project. Okay, and they were told to conduct the survey, and they found it very interesting. They used to read the questions and come back to us and talk about that. But we tried to avoid answering anything, and we tried to let them decide what they feel, because sometimes people mark their answers and they were not readable. Okay, so whether they are satisfied, not satisfied, somebody put the mark in the middle somewhere, or so one of the team members, they asked me, are you looking for environment savvy people or tech savvy or environment friendly people? So I was like, no, you have to tell us what data tells us. Okay, so we can't impose anything. So we cannot discuss this. That's why a new team is added, because you have to read through those comments, and then we have to record those interesting insights. I would not add any bias from my side that yes, keep all the people as environment friendly or something. So no comments. You have to enter the details and let us know what's happening. Okay, so that's kind of unbiased research. Even if you have to hire someone who does not belong to the same project, that would be even more unbiased approach that can be incorporated. Now, the steps in interview-based qualitative research, you have to identify goals. So, for example, you are planning to conduct an interview for a certain project or your research study, but you cannot just go over a cup of tea to conduct that interview and randomly let environment define the questions, like what do you feel like asking, you may ask. Otherwise, no, that's not how interviews would be done. For research study, you need to have certain questions in mind beforehand. So you need to study the problem statement before meeting that particular individual in a particular environment. Rather, you need to identify the goals of the interview, and who are the interviews going to be. You should know their profile beforehand, and what are the questions, you need to develop them. Scheduling of the interviews, when you conduct, you record, you can take note. Even in your mobile phones, there is a audio to text thing that you can record, and it will transcribe for you. Okay, so all of the interview will be transcribed, and then you can identify the keywords from that transcription. You can ask follow-up questions as well. If you feel like after the interview, you transcribed, you looked at those keywords, but then there were a few points that you're not clear, you can follow up for that particular interview as well. So these are the steps that are involved in the qualitative research. So why are we discussing those steps? Because you have to do that research, either quantitative or qualitative. Another very important requirement, you cannot conduct any interview. For example, if I ask you to go and look at the NSW schools and see whether teenagers, they are satisfied with the quality of education in a particular suburb for a particular school, selective, non-selective, you cannot go and ask them, although you know that these are the teenager groups or the year 11 or year 10 groups. You know their class timings. You have got working with children check and all of other elements enabled, but you cannot conduct that until one step is done. And what is that step? Remember, we talked about it in the last class. Anyone from the online students? Something related to ethics. Yeah. So does anyone remember? What do we require before we communicate? Even a survey, you are presented with a lecturer satisfaction or unit evaluation survey, right? As a student, you are presented with those surveys. Before those surveys are done, we cannot conduct that. We require some of the committees to get involved, and those committees are called ethical approval committee. Okay, so ethics approval committee must see all of the questions that you're going to ask. Okay, and the content must be known to the ethical approval committee before they approve. Okay, so the reason why I'm asking you, okay, if you go for NSW students in year 11 for a particular school and see how satisfied they are with their education system, you cannot directly jump in until you have got the ethical approval of the list of questions that you're going to ask. What are you going to talk about? What are the terms that you're going to use? Because they might get offended. Any individual can get offended with certain questions. Okay, so the ethical approval committee is going to decide on whether this point is something we can discuss or not. Okay, so if they disapprove, you have to remove that question. And without that approval, you cannot technically do that. Okay. For the purpose of this course, you might read through the course outline, unit outline, assignment guidelines. You will provide that, okay, ethical approval is done. Okay. And you're not going to technically go and interview someone, rather, you're going to create, like within the students, you're going to do that. Okay. These are the people living in a particular suburb. I'm going to ask them certain questions. You'll assume that they live in North Sydney, let's say, and you're looking at adoption of electric vehicles in North Sydney. Okay, so there will be certain assumptions that you will highlight, because without ethical approval, you cannot do that, and you will not. It's just for the purpose of research and documentation and this course study and learning that you're going to do. Okay, later on, once you do your master's thesis or your PhD thesis, you cannot do that without ethical approval, and your supervisors, they must inform you how to do that. Okay, so if you are going through any quantitative, qualitative, you will be informed about the ethical approval committee. Then there's a description of each step, identifying main goals of the interview, study on people working from home during COVID-19. That was a very interesting topic. And then people were interviewed. Are you more, some of them were very honest to tell that, yes, we enjoyed working at home, but we worked half of the time. Half the time we could not focus on work because we switched to the home task. Others, they really utilized that part, and they invested the travel time on work as well. So instead of wasting the time in travel, they got more hours to work for the work itself. Identifying interviews, for example, you are studying how a new school program is working. You might choose to interview teachers who are using the program, students who are part of it, and parents whose kids are in the program. So you need to know all of the people who are involved in that particular study. And do you think you need to interview them or not? Okay. Your questions, they should be sorted beforehand. It's not that, okay, I'll go for a cup of tea and I'll figure out, I will sit down with them, discuss, and we will see what do I have to ask. I will ask. Yes, a new question might come in based on the response, but if it is coming in, you have to tell that based on your response from this one, may I also ask an added part. Okay, so because it has just intuitively raised. Yeah, you have to do scheduling of the interviews, because no two people can meet if they're not available. Okay, so both parties need to be available, and then they can meet up. Transcription, this can be done using the technology. But again, if you are transcribing using your laptop, using your mobile phone, this should be informed to the interviews. It's not that they don't know and you're recording your video recording or audio recording and they don't even know they are being recorded. So even if I record your lecture, I have to announce that, okay, I'm about to start your lecture recording. So you are informed about this transcription or recorded stuff. So here are some of the samples, and what everyone else has seen, and to think what nobody else has thought. So they have seen but haven't thought. So you are responsible for thinking what others could not think. Okay, so that's part of research. That's why it's called research. So it was not found before. You have to go and do it again. Variables, hypothesis, dependent variable, independent variable, that is very important to understand. Okay, so yeah, we will look at your assignments thing, and I will put your class attendance in as well. I'm not too sure if it is minimum of 9. I think you have to attend all of them. From look at your campus policy, because slides, they are coming in from the previous class. So don't rely on the policies for your attendance thing, only from the slides. Okay, so let's go and put your attendance in first, because we'll have to fix your last attendance as well. Descriptive research, did we look at?
You are watching Educational Hub. A descriptive research design can use a wide variety of research methods to investigate one or more variables. Unlike in experimental research, the researcher does not control or manipulate any of the variables, but only observes and measures them. First, we need to understand, what is descriptive research? Descriptive research aims to accurately and systematically describe a population, situation, or phenomenon. It can answer what, where, when, and how questions, but not why questions. When to use a descriptive research design. Descriptive research is an appropriate choice when the research aim is to identify characteristics, frequencies, trends, and categories. It is useful when not much is known yet about the topic or problem. Before you can research why something happens, you need to understand how, when, and where it happens. Descriptive research methods. Descriptive research is usually defined as a type of quantitative research, though qualitative research can also be used for descriptive purposes. The research design should be carefully developed to ensure that the results are valid and reliable. 1. Surveys. Survey research allows you to gather large volumes of data that can be analyzed for frequencies, averages, and patterns. Common uses of surveys include describing the demographics of a country or region, gauging public opinion on political and social topics, evaluating satisfaction with a company's products or an organization's services. 2. Observations. Observations allow you to gather data on behaviors and phenomena without having to rely on the honesty and accuracy of respondents. This method is often used by psychological, social, and market researchers to understand how people act in real-life situations. Observation of physical entities and phenomena is also an important part of research in the natural sciences. Before you can develop testable hypotheses, models, or theories, it's necessary to observe and systematically describe the subject under investigation. 3. Case studies. A case study can be used to describe the characteristics of a specific subject, such as a person, group, event, or organization. Instead of gathering a large volume of data to identify patterns across time or location, case studies gather detailed data to identify the characteristics of a narrowly defined subject. Thank you for watching. Like, share.
So you have to do the case study part for the purpose of your upcoming week 4 assessment. Okay, let's go to your attendance. Six to 9, 40 registered students. It's a big number. Okay, you can see the student list. I'll stop recording here. Okay.